Yeah, Madhu, can you unmute? Then I'll see the unmute sign. Madhu in Nottingham, can you unmute so that I'll see your sign and then I'll make you host.
Yeah.
I've done it, Sudarshan.
Oh, you changed it to Padmaja. Yeah, okay, then that's fine. So I'm making you host, Madhu. Yeah, you can start anytime. I started on the recording as well. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's get started. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Yo antah pravishya mama vacha imam prashuptam sanjeevayati akhila shakti darasvadamna अन्यांष्टहस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान् प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथाभूतं विष्णुतत्त्वविनिर्णयम्. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone. So today is the 15th lecture in the series on Katha Upanishad. We are still in the first adhyaya. So let's dig in straight. So what did we do last week? So we did, I'm just going to go through these verses. Asino duram rajati shayano yati sarvataha. Kastam mada madam devam madanyo nyatumarhati ashariram sharireshu anavasteshu avastitam mahantam vibhum atmanam matva dhiro nasochati. Na ayam atma pravachanena labhyaha na medaya na bahuna shrutena yam yevesha vrunute tena labhyaha tasyaisha atma vivrunute tanun swam. So these were the verses that we did last Sunday, and we also briefly touched upon the most important verse in the second valli of the first adhyaya, verse mantra 14. Sarve Vedaha yat padamamananti tapamsi sarvani cha yad vadanti yadichanto brahmacharyam charanti tatte padam sangrahena bravimi om ityetat. So we kind of had a comprehensive view of what is our Guru Yama actually discussing here. He says the whole of the Vedas talk about the greatness of Brahman. And then he goes on to say, although you read all the Vedas, although you go to various pravachanas, although you hear various discourses, you still cannot attain that Brahman. Just going and reading the Vedas, memorizing the Vedas, or just going to a discourse and hearing those discourses you will not attain Brahman just because of you doing that. You need something more to it than just this activity. You need a lot more. And that took us to the concept of divine grace, how the divine grace operates at every stage of our careers as souls. And that divine grace is absolutely essential for us not only finding a guru, for us not only gaining the knowledge, but at the same time we increase our devotion, and with devotion we again get the divine grace, and with the divine grace we have our salvation. So at every stage of the journey of souls, this divine grace becomes actually very essential. So we have done this journey of soul series of 6 lectures, and this particular slide here essentially is a summary of that. This supreme can be known only through the Vedas. And to understand the Vedas, you need Brahma Mimamsa Shastra or Brahma Sutra. Once you understand the Vedas, then you understand Brahman is celebrated in the Vedas as a being of infinite auspicious attributes and without any defects. And once we are firmly fixed in that knowledge, yeah, our devotion towards him, our admiration towards him increases, and as our admiration towards him increases, he eventually sheds his grace. And the Shastras are also very clear. Veda Vyasa is very clear in his Brahma Sutra that with knowledge and devotion comes what is called as the Aparoksha Jnana. What is Aparoksha Jnana? Self-realization as well as God realization. We have an idea of who we actually are, and we see the Supreme Being who is an Antaryamin inside us. And that is a prerequisite. That Aparoksha Jnana is prerequisite before we are able to cross over the trans-empirical cross over to the trans-empirical plane called Vaikunta, Shvetadipa, Anantasana, or Vishnuloka, or Tad Vishnoho Paramam Padam, as Yama describes this in Katha Upanishad. So for this journey of souls, grace is very important. But to attain his grace, the question then is, what are the essential requirements? Yeah. So I put here, he can be only known through the Vedas, and that Brahma Mimamsa Shastras or Vedanta Sutras or Brahma Sutras become important for us to understand the Vedas. But not your every Tom, Dick, and Harry on the streets is actually interested in the Vedas. Nobody is actually, from my experience of what I have seen, hardly anybody is interested in our Indian scriptures. Hardly anybody is interested in Hindu scriptures. It is the very few who are interested in this, as Krishna described in the Gita. Yeah. So for those of us who have this aptitude to go towards scriptures, to try and understand this, trans-empirical truths, the super sensuous sensory truths, where do we start? What are our requirements? So in the very next verse, Yama actually talks about this. Okay. So what does he say? Na avirato dushcharitaha, na ashanto, na samahitaha, na ashanta manaso vapi pragnanenam apniyat. So this is again it's in a very shortened form of what essentially is one's lifetime of work. Yeah. And let me take you through this. There are three different ways of approaching this verse. And of course, our Bhagavad Gita is an expansion of this verse, and it gives you how should your conduct in life should be, so that you are able to move towards the supreme, so that you are able to move towards the Shreyas, as Yama calls it. So let's look at this verse in three different perspectives. So let's open it up. So again, we need to open these verses to actually understand what they are saying. So navirato dushtaritaha, na avirataha dushcharitat. So that is how you split it over. So what is the meaning of avirataha and dushcharitat? This we are all very familiar with. So many of us are doing this at this point. Avirataha, rataha, virataha, avirataha. So opposite of somebody who is very good. Who is that person? Who that person is somebody who continues to do bad deeds or adharma. So avirataha and dushcharitat. Dushcharitat means bad actions. Yeah. So there's all of us, we have done this at some point in our lives, in this life. Avirataha, dushcharitat. So if somebody is continuing to do bad deeds and bad thoughts and bad actions and so on, for him, na, in the sense, for him, there is no chance of ever getting into this path of spiritual realization. Ashantaha, shantaha, mind under control. Ashantaha, senses not under control. Yeah. So for that person whose senses are not under control, for him, there is no chance of actually attaining that Vishnoho Paramam Padam. There is no chance for that person. Asamahitaha, the one who has an unconcentrated mind, the one who is not fixed, who is not determined to do something, he is called asamahitaha. For him, na, not attained. Okay. Ashanta manaso, the one who has uncontrolled mind, again, for him, this Vishnoho Paramam Padam cannot be attained. So these are very important verses. Avirataha, Dushcharitat, Ashantaha, Asamahitaha, Ashanta Manasa. So these are all the ideas that Krishna actually elaborates in Bhagavad Gita. And we are all very familiar with this, at least the verses, and how we put that in practice in our life is an entirely different ball game. But at least we need to know these ideas. So what are those? He who continues to do bad deeds, he who does adharma, he whose senses are not in control, he who has unconcentrated mind, and he who has uncontrolled mind, for him there is no chance of actually making spiritual realization and progress. Now you look at it in another way. So there may be some person. So avirataha is somebody who does bad deeds. Na avirataha means somebody who does not do bad deeds, but who is a good person. Okay. So let us take an atheist. Let us take a materialist. I know so many of my friends who are atheists, but they are perfectly sensible human beings. They're perfectly ethical human beings, but they just don't have God in their equation. So they are truthful and they're ethical in their life. So the question arises, and there are many folks who would say this, look, I'm very sincere in what I do. I'm very honest with what I do, and I will carry on with my life like this. And will that such kind of a person have any possibility of attaining God realization and reaching that Brahmaloka or Vishnu Loka? Yama says, no, just being ethical in your life is not going to take you. It is helpful. It is a step in the right direction, but ultimately it will not take you to God realization. So an atheist, many atheists are like this, but they do not have faith in God. So those folks, they can have a decent life, but they are not going to reach that supreme destination. Okay, so ashantaha na, he who has senses under control, he who has a concentrated mind, na asamahitaha, na ashanta manasaha, that is he who has a controlled mind, he who has a concentrated mind, he who has his senses under control, plus faith in God in that equation. So when you put that faith in God in that equation, with mind fixed in God, always undisturbed mind, as everything is predestined by God, i.e., we understand our dependence on this supreme being. So he is that person who really is in that path of self-realization. So we need all this. Yes, we need to be following the path of dharma. We need to have our senses under control. We need to have a mind that is fixed, and we need to have a controlled mind. But if you are an atheist, it's not going to take you anywhere. You need to have that faith in God and mind fixed in God. And only then you have a chance of getting that grace. Yam yevesha vrunute tena labhyaha tasyaisha atma vivrunute tanun swam. For that to happen, this is a prerequisite. It is that faith mixed with all the other things that is described here that Krishna actually elaborates in the Bhagavad Gita. So that's the beauty of Katha Upanishad, as we have read this, understood this on a millions of occasions, that Katha and Gita needs to be studied together. So then what does our friend says? So na avirataha dushtaritat, na ashantaha, na samahitaha, na ashanta manaso vapi prajnana enam apnuat. Okay, so there is this important word called prajnana. So let's see what that word prajnana actually means. So I've just put this in the box here to just give you an idea of jnana in Sanskrit language. Opens up in two different ways. Jnana is knowledge, we all know that. But there are two other knowledge, isn't it? Vijnana and prajnana. So I'm going to break there for a minute and get you folks to think about this problem or this question as to what is Vijnana and what is prajnana and what is our understanding of that. So who is going to take that one? What is Vijnana?
Prajnana is the knowledge which enhances us, which talks us about something sreshta. So maybe about the Lord only is prajnana. Okay, well done, Pratibhaji. It's excellent. So there are two aspects. The jnana can be of two types: prajnana and vijnana. Vijnana is, we talk about science. Science is called vijnana, right? What is science? Material science. It is the deeper understanding of how the material world works. That is vijnana. That is literally is science. We are just understanding how the material science is working. Yeah, we don't know why the material world works like this. All that we are doing is we are trying to explain how it is working, and that is what science does. Whereas we are not understanding as to how and why the things are happening. We only know how things are happening. Why things are happening in that way, we are not looking at it in material science.
So vijnana is deep knowledge about a particular subject. Whereas prajnana is, as Pratibhaji mentioned, prakrishta jnana, that which is sreshta and that which elevates you. So we got Neeta or Sushrut has raised his hands. Sushrut, do you want to come in?
No, Madhu, I was just wondering whether this is the same as Paravidya and Aparavidya.
Yeah, wonderful, Sushrut. Yeah, very good. Yeah, that's exactly right. So Paravidya is that which gives you the knowledge of Akshara, whereas Aparavidya is just the material science. Yeah, fully agree with you, Sushrut. Yeah, excellent contribution there. So, so we got Jnana, you got Prajnana and Vijnana. So now the question here is, this is a twist. Again, we need to look at it in two different ways. Look at this word. And again, looking at the Upanishad language is really interesting. And we should never make the blunder of skimming the surface. And unfortunately, there are lots of transliteration which just skims the surface and they come up with various interpretations, which is unfortunate. But let's look at this in a proper grammatical way of splitting it open. So if you look at Prajnana enam apnuat. So Prajnana na enam apnuat is one way of splitting this sentence. Prajnana na enam apnuat. So just knowledge about the Sreshta Vastu alone is not sufficient to reach the Supreme. Yeah, yes, it is useful. It is still a step. But just the knowledge about Brahman alone cannot be liberating for us. Look at our friend Shvetaketu. We all know that story of Chandogya Upanishad chapter 6. When this fellow went to Gurukula for 12 years and he read all the Vedas, he thought he knew about Brahman and so on, but actually he didn't go anywhere. So just the knowledge alone is not sufficient to reach the Supreme, is one aspect to this particular mantra. So we have to put this in context here. Just doing good deeds, just having sense under control, just having a concentrated mind, just having controlled mind, or just having the knowledge about Brahman, all these are still not fully enough for us to reach his abode. Na enam apnuat. But what do you need? Prajnana enam apnuat. So what does that mean? Prajnanena enam apnuat. So that is another way of splitting that word, that complex word. Prajnanena. Prajnanena means only through prajnana, enam, this Brahman, apnuat, can be reached. Okay, so what is prajnana there? So prajnana there, as Pratibhaji mentioned, prajnana is sreshta vastu, higher knowledge. High knowledge is prajnana. But if you lift that prajnana into the highest sense, what does that mean? That is interesting, because our knowledge that we have from the material world is what is called as vritti jnana. Vritti means vritti is the knowledge that we get because of the modification of your mind. Okay, so think about this problem. So there are the external objects, you have the sense organs, and you're seeing the external object, and the nerve impulses go to the retina, for example, and from there the electrical impulses go to the optic lobe. And in the optic lobe, there is some electrical activity, and the mind aspect there gets modified. And that modification of the mind stuff, your sakshi or your soul is aware of that modification of the mind stuff, which corresponds to the object of the external world. And then you get the knowledge that I have seen this tree. Okay, so that is perfect neurophysiological sense. Nobody can have any argument with that, because that is what our rishis have also described about what is external vritti jnana. Okay, that is the modification of the mind stuff. But the real prajnana is the knowledge that is generated within the soul, within the jiva, that actually goes inwards and sees that antaryamin inside, and also understands its own state. So the highest levels of knowledge, prajnana, is self-realization and God realization. Okay, so when you take it from that higher sense, that again makes perfect sense here. Prajnana enam apnuyat. That is, you need to get aparoksha jnana by his grace, And once you get aparoksha jnana, then he removes that veil and shows us, look, I am right inside you, mate. And he shows himself as Antaryamin. And that is the next stage. And once the Antaryami darshana has happened, the Shastras then say that for such a person, all the karmas are removed. Karma kshaya happens. And all that he has to do is whatever his prarabdha karma is at this point of time, he has to exhaust that prarabdha karma. And once that happens, he goes to Satyaloka and stays with Chaturmukha. And once our Chaturmukha has completed his 100 years, then he goes along with Chaturmukha Brahma and has the dip in the Viraja river, sheds his Linga Sharira, and then crosses over to the Vishnu Loka. Yeah, so that is the journey of souls that Yama is talking to us about in these beautiful sets of words. And I hope that makes sense. And that makes logical sense with regards to how our Upanishad squeezes in all these ideas in words, in small, compact words. And if we do not open those words and understand the inner meaning, it is only our fault. All that we need to do is we need to make that effort to break open chadayanti iti chandamsi, as you know, we need to break open the words and understand what the Shastras are telling us. And this is what they're telling us, which is categorically what Yama is actually teaching us. Okay, so this aparoksha jnana, prajnana, yeah, so this prajnana then becomes important. Prajnana, knowledge of ourselves and knowledge of Brahman. Okay. So then the question is, do we all get the same quanta of knowledge of God? To reach Vishnu Loka, this is all prerequisite, isn't it? Knowledge of God. So the question there is, do we all get the same quanta of knowledge of God? What is the view here? Does anybody wants to contribute here? I don't need, Sushrut has got a historically raised hand. I don't know whether he wants to come in again or others. That do we all think that we all get the same quanta of knowledge of God? What is the view here?
Madhu, Suresha. Madhu, before that, I just had a question on the verse that you just finished. Isn't this exactly a definition of Sthita Prajna as Krishna talks in chapter 2, or is it any different in that? That was one question that came to my mind.
Yeah.
And to the question that you were asking about the quantum of knowledge, that is dependent on our individual capability, right? I mean, it's not that we'll get the same amount of knowledge, but we reach the best that we can to our maximal capacity, perhaps. Yeah, but that capacity varies from individual to individual is how I would understand.
Yeah, fantastic, Suresh. Thank you so much. We got Neeta and Sushrut also, they've raised hands.
Yeah, in addition to what Suresh has said, depends on how much effort you have put in your previous lives as well, because whatever little we are doing now should be carried forward into our next Janma and thereafter. So it all depends on how much each one of us has been doing before as well. So I suppose that will change the quantum of knowledge that each person has in this particular life. But eventually, yes, it depends on the capacity.
Yeah, fantastic. Sushit, beautiful. Yes. And
one doubt I had before we go. When you said about this prajnana, the knowledge that is generated within the soul, but the jiva is Satchit Ananda already. Will it get this new knowledge of aparoksha jnana? It is the mind's veil has to be removed, but the knowledge is already there, no?
Okay, so two important points there. So I'll take up your question first, Pratibhaji. So remember, when we did that concept of ignorance, and souls have two different types of ignorance. One is called Jivachadika and the other one is called Paramachadika. So these are the wheels that are there within the soul itself, which prevents the soul from knowing its true nature. Yes, the soul knows, you and I, we know we exist. That is about how much we are aware at this point. But what is our true nature? Yes, you're right, Satchitananda. But what is the intensity of the Satchitananda in us? What is our quanta of knowledge of Supreme God in us? We don't have at this point. And the Jivachadika has to be removed. Yeah. And for that, you of course need a divine grace to remove the Jivachadika That is called self-realization. And then you have the paramachadika, which is a veil, it is like a screen which just temporarily it's opened up, and then you have the darshan of the Supreme. And that is the reason why many of these temples have these screens. Yeah, when you go to Tirupati or any temple, you have this wheel, and then the wheel is open and everybody is making a lot of chaos. Yeah, so that is what they do. They actually don't understand what is that wheel actually signifies. That wheel is the paramachadika. And when that wheel is removed, then you have a brief glimpse of the Supreme. So there are two ignorances that are there, and the Jivachadika is inside the soul itself, that has to be removed by divine intervention. So I hope that answers your question. Suresh, your point about Sthita Prajna is fantastic. When Krishna says, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan, etc., that exactly, you are absolutely right. So all these are only expand, as I said before, the more verses in Gita we look at, we can easily fit how crisp and how in a very abbreviated way Yama has actually said this. And if we can spend and do our research and understand the Gita in that context, it makes it much more useful. So I don't know if anybody wants to come in and recite that verse, Sthita Prajnas Tada Uchyate. Who wants to recite that? If Veena ji is there, or Suresh, you want to go for that verse?
I don't remember it by heart, Madhu. So
okay, so that's probably, we'll leave it for next class. But you are absolutely right, Suresh. It's that control of the mind and Sthita Prajna. Please, yeah, Sheila ji, go for it.
So first I'll ask the question. Sthita prajnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava sthitadi kim prabhasheta kim vrajeta kim dukkeshvanudvigna mana sukeshu vigataspraha. I've forgotten.
Vitaraga bhaya krodha.
Vitaraga bhaya krodha sthitadir muniruchyate. Thank you.
Wonderful, Sheila ji, beautiful. So yes, so lots of excellent discussions on this verse. So that quanta of knowledge, at least that is one of the views of certain schools of Vedanta, is the quanta of knowledge of souls about Brahman. It varies. That is, there are gradations of knowledge of God. Okay, so that is an idea. It is prevalent in certain schools of Vedanta. But we will have to see what is Katha Upanishad saying. What is our Yama's view on this? Yeah, that is what we are in, isn't it? There are different schools. They may have differences of opinion. But we have to see what Yama is saying. Does Yama concur with those views? Or are those views inspired by the views of Yama? Okay, let's go to the next verse. This is one of my favorite verses. I love this verse. Yasya brahma cha kshatram cha ube bhavata odanaha mrityur asya upasechanam ka itta veda yatra saha. So that aparoksha jnana, when he is talking about the knowledge, Yama then gives a beautiful illustration. This metaphor is amazing. We all, in Indian households and temples and matas and so on, you have this banana leaf and they put everything in a particular order, and the food is served. And Yama takes this example. So again, we know in Vedic times, this is how food was served. And in many temples and matas, this is how the food is still served. So Yama takes this example. He's just to bring it in context. Why has he taken this example? He has taken this example because in the previous verse he said, you need prajnana enam apniyat, and that knowledge. And then he's in an ecstatic mood of describing this antaryami inside him. But then he's also very humble. He said, this antaryami is inside me, Nachiketa, and I am the 12th rank in the Vedic pantheon. But you know what? I am nothing. He is very, very humble. Although Yama is teaching the highest of knowledge, he is very humble. And he says, my situation is nothing. Look at this food. And he says, Yasya brahmacha kshatramcha ube bhavata odanaha. So what is odanaha? Odanaha means in Kannada it's called tuttu. Yeah, it is a morsel of food. That's called odanaha. Okay, so our Yama says, who am I? How much do I know about Brahman? Actually, nothing. Look at the ones that are above me. Look at Brahma and Kshatra. So we need to understand who this Brahma and Kshatra is. Brahma is very easy, Chaturmukha Brahma. Okay. Kshatriya. Kshatriya means you can say it is Kshatriya. So Vayu, Mukhya Prana, they are Kshatras. Kshatram is Vayu, literally. And the other way of looking at it is Brahma means those jivas who have the quality of going towards the supreme, who have knowledge. The Abhimani Devatas of jivas who have the predisposition to scriptures, for example, their Abhimani Devatas Chaturmukha Brahma, and a few others, including Agni. And that is the reason why we do Agni Upasana and all that in our Vedic traditions. So Chaturmukha and Agni, for example, are considered as Brahma. They're Brahma Abhimani Devatas. Kshatriya Abhimani Devatas are Vayu, Indra, and so on. Yeah. So they are all the other folks. So, but here primarily Yama takes these two chaps, Chaturmukha Brahma and Vayu, and he says, who am I? Yama is saying to Nachiketa, who am I, Nachiketa, in this equation? I am nobody. Look at the great exalted souls like Chaturmukha Brahma, Mukhya Prana. They themselves are a couple of morsel of food for this Brahman. And what is my state? Mrityur asya upasechanam. And upasechana in Sanskrit is uppinkai. It's pickle. Yeah, or the side items that are served at the top end of the banana leaf. Your palya or your vegetable this thing or your pickle. These are all the upasechanas for your dinner. And Mrityu says, for the supreme being, I am just a pickle. Mrityurasya upasechanam. Yeah. So there are some interesting ideas that come. So here, Yama is immediately talking about these gradations of devatas of the Vedic pantheon. Yasya brahmacha kshatram cha ube bhavata odanaha mrityurasya upasechanam. Ka itta veda yatra saha. Kaha itta veda yatra saha. What do I know? I am just a pickle for this Brahman. I am such a small entity. How can I describe the greatness, all the glories of Brahman? Yeah? So I wanted to bring in some interesting ideas here about Mrityu Rasya Upasechanam, the word Mrityu. Yeah. So Mrityu, we all know, Mrityu is a very famous word for Yama. Yama is called Mrityu. That is fine. But I've got a question here. Who is going to tell us what is Mrityunjaya mantra? What is that Mrityunjaya mantra that we all know about? Anybody wants to talk about Mrityunjaya mantra, Mrityunjaya homa, that many of us here would have performed those homas in our lifetime? So who is that Mrityu that is celebrated there? Who wants to take that question?
Ishvara?
Yeah, Ishvara in the sense you're Rudra, right? Rudra Shiva.
No, Ishvara in the sense Ishvara, in the Hiranyagarbha, Ishvara.
So the Ishvara who is higher than the Shiva. Yeah. Rudra. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sheilaji. Anybody else has a different view there? Who is that Mrityu that is celebrated in Mrityunjaya Homa? And people shall do that Homa for good health and all that.
It could be Garuda Rudra together, Abhimani Devatas probably.
Yeah. Jagdish, thank you so much. I think the clue is there in the slide itself, but that's good. Yeah, so all of us are right in this. So Mrityu, the word Mrityu is a very generic term. And again, it depends on the context in which you are talking about. What is that Mrityu? Mrityu denotes quite a few exalted devatas in the Vedic pantheon. So as Jagadish ji very rightly pointed out, Mrityu can also mean Garuda, Sesha, Rudra, or Mrityu also can mean Yama, or in the Paramamukhya Vritti, Mrityu is also our supreme Brahman. Yeah, he is also Mrityu. So, but in the not the Paramamukhya Vritti, Garuda, Sesha, Rudra are also called Mrityu. And again, as you know, in the Shaivism schools, Mrityunjaya Homa is very popular and people do it very sincerely. And that Mrityunjaya comes in the Rig Veda. In the 7th book of the Mandala of the Rig Veda, there is this beautiful verse, Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukam Iva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiya Ma Amrutat. So it's a very nice verse there where you pray to this Mrityunjaya, the Shiva or the Ishvara, and you say, look, protect me, give me knowledge, make me exalted, so that just as how the cucumber falls off the plant when it is fully ripe, the cucumber just falls off. Like that, let my samsara bandhana also just fall off by your grace. It's a beautiful mantra of Rig Veda. So that mrityu there can also be Rudra. So I just want to pull you back to this verse, mrityur asya upasechanam. So all these chaps, Agni, Chaturmukha, Indra, Vayu, Garuda, Sesha, Rudra, Yama, these are all in that. So that when you put that Vedic pantheon in this equation, the verse makes absolute sense. When Yama is saying, I am the 12th rank, but the fellows who are above me are also, they are also in this plate that Brahman eats. They are all small portions. Yama says, Mrityus are pickles, and these Vodanas are Chaturmukha, and Vayu or Mukhya Prana. And then when you take it from his perspective, and he says, Mrityu Rasya Upasechanam, I am just a pickle, Nachiketa. What do I know about this Brahman? Kayitta Veda Yatra Saha. Or it becomes even more interesting. Kaha, and if you remember in the previous verse, when we did last week, we said Kaha is a name for Chaturmukha Brahma and Vayu. And he says, I do not know much about this Brahman, but this highest exalted Jivas, Kaha, they know more about me, and I'm just explaining whatever little I know. So Yama in this verse brings that this humility, which is an essential quality for spiritual progression. And he says, look, I am nobody in this equation at the highest sense. So this word annam becomes very important. So basically what it is, it's about eating, isn't it? There is this food there. This is annam, and there is food, and everybody is eating here. And each devata is described as one aspect of food. Okay, so that is very interesting. That annam is very interesting, and I just want to bring this beautiful verse in Taittiriya Upanishad, okay, where the liberated Chaturmukha Brahma, okay, so the Taittiriya Upanishad talks about this Chaturmukha Brahma who is Vodanaha, who is just a tuttu, he is just a morsel of food for Brahman. In his liberated state, he is singing. And how is he singing? Ahamannam, ahamannam, ahamannam. Aham annadaha, aham annadaha, aham annadaha. Aham shlokakrit, aham shlokakrit, aham shlokakrit. He is singing that in those Vedic mantras, Taittiriya Upanishad, where this Chaturmukha says, I am the food of Brahman. So that food, Anna, becomes very important in Vedic philosophy. Again, the Taittiriya Upanishad describes this Anna in great detail. Hopefully, we'll pick Taittiriya at some point. And it gives what is Annam? Adyate atticha bhutani tasmad annam tad uchyata iti is the explanation of what Annam actually means. Adyate means atticha. Atticha means that which is eaten is food. Adyate, which upon which you are dependent, is also food. And this Upanishad says that Annam is a name for Brahman, because we are dependent on Brahman, and in Pralaya, he eats us all up. So there are different ways of looking at Annam, but it makes perfect sense in various angles for this mantra, where our Guru Yama is taking this beautiful example of a banana leaf and food and explains, look, I am nobody in this. In that sense, we have to be humble. So that is another prerequisite. You may have all sorts of prajnana, you may have all sorts of knowledge about Brahman, but the moment the ego comes in that I know more, I am a pandit, that is the fall. And the Shastras are very clear about that ego. Once the ego comes, God goes. So being humble, exhibiting humility, is an essential quality for spiritual progression. And that is also an idea that our friend, our Guru Yama, brings up here. So, Ka Yitta Veda Yatra Saha. This Brahman is so high, he is so supreme. Who is to know him fully? Who is to inform us of all his glory, Who is to inform us fully of where and how he resides in Vaikuntha? So Yama is actually saying all this, and then he says, Ka Veda Yatra Saha. These two chaps know him reasonably well, as they are the first to come during creation, and they are the last to be eaten in Pralaya. God, who has graced them with knowledge, so they have higher knowledge. And Yama not only praises the Supreme, but he also praises his own gurus, who are the ones above him, who are Chaturmukha and Mukhya Prana and so on. So iti Katako Upanishadi Pratamo Adhyayaha Ditihi Valli. So with this, we have actually finished the second Valli of Kataka Upanishad, where Yama finishes at a very high note, exhibiting extreme humility in this verse. So just to remind you, over 6 months, I think we have done 29 plus 25 mantras. So we have done 54 mantras, and I think we have done some reasonable justice with regards to giving justice to each word and understanding what is the philosophy, what is the Vedic philosophy there. Okay, so we can all pat our back that we have finished the second Valli. But if you think second Valli is beautiful, I have to just qualify. The third Valli goes to even higher heights. The philosophy that is described in the third Valli is one step higher. And what is that? So I just want to recite this and we will try and deal with the first verse. So how does the third Valli go? Ritam pibantau sukrutasya loke guham pravishtav parame pararde chaya tapo brahmavido vadanti panchagnayo yecha trinachiketaha ye setur ijananam aksharam brahma yat param abhayam titirshitam param nachiketasam sakemahi. I'll stop there, otherwise this will take another 10 minutes. So we'll try and see if we can at least do the first verse. Ritam pibantau sukrutasya loke guham pravishtav parame pararde chaya tapau brahmavido vadanti panchagnayo yecha trinachiketaha. It seems to be in a puzzle, but if we have understood the first Valli and the second Valli in its proper perspective, then this verse will cause us no confusion or problem. Why do I say that? Okay, and as I said, Chadayanti Hava Enam Chandamsi. We should split it open. Okay, Guham. So let's go to this verse. Guham Pravishtav. So Guham means what? Cave. Pravishta means what? He who is there in the cave. But the wording is very clear. The grammar there is Pravishtav. Yeah, look at the Sanskrit word Pravishtav. Tau is a dual. So Tau means dual. So the mantra here says Guham Pravishtav. There are two chappies in this Guha. Okay, two beings are in this cave. Okay, what is that cave? We have done that cave before, isn't it? Of the thymus gland, where there is that needle-shaped cave, where there is this jiva, and inside the jiva is antaryamin, and then of course you have the thymus, and of course the gross material body. So this particular verse is one of the key verses of Vedic philosophy and Vedantic philosophies, because our Guru Veda Vyasa has composed a sutra to actually describe and clarify who these two beings are in the Guha. There is a very famous Vedanta sutra called Guham Pravishta Atmanauhi Tad Darshanat. Okay, so Veda Vyasa has given an answer here. This is a very cryptic verse, and that is why our Guru Veda Vyasa has taken this Vedic word and said, who are those two? Atmanau, two Atmans. Atmanau hi Tad Darshanat. So I just want to pick up this Guham Pravishtav from different angles. So who are these two? Is it the mind and the jiva that is being described? Or is it the jivatma and the paramatma that is described? Or it is the two forms of paramatma in our bodies? Paramatma, of course, has infinite forms, right? He's got infinite forms everywhere. In our form, in our jiva, he is in the bimba form, but in our material coverings also he is there. There is no place where this Brahman is not there. He has infinite forms everywhere. And in this particular mantra, whether it is two forms of Brahman that is described, or is it jiva and paramatma that is described, or it is mind and jiva that is described. So that is discussed by our acharyas, Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya. They all take up this verse and they describe in great detail. So you can do your homework and do that kind of a research and understand how it comes. But my idea here is to bring this verse and give you the context, because we have done two vallis now, and this is the very first verse of the third valli. Okay, so I take of the view that there are two forms of Paramatma that is being described, and I'll tell you why that is the case. So what is that Guha? So first he said Guham Pravishta. There are two beings in the Guha. So the next question is, what is that Guha? And our Yama says Parame pararde. Okay. Guham pravishto parame pararde. Parame pararde. What does that mean? Break it open. Parame pararde. Parame means what? Very easy. Supreme, Sreshta, God's abode. Okay. Pararde. What is pararde? Pararde again has got various meanings. So, for example, Shweta Varaha Kalpe, Prathama Pararde, Shweta Varaha Kalpe, and all that we do when we do our sankalpas and so on. That is one. Pararda means the half. Whereas Pararde in the Vedic language becomes Para and Arde. Arde means house or abode. Para Arde means Paramatma's abode. What is that Paramatma's abode? In the Guha that is doing, that is, he's talking about where this Paramatma is there in us. That is what Yama is talking about here. Guham Pravishtav Parame Pararde. So, what are they doing sitting in that Guha? Rutam Pibantav. So, again, watch the wordings there. Tau. Tau, as I said, is dual. Yeah. Guham Pravishtav. Rutam Pibantav. Yeah. So, dual again. So, Rutam Pibantav, the two enjoyers or experiencers. So now the question is, Ritam is a very important word in Vedic philosophy. You would have read Rita. Rita, for example, in Rig Veda, Rita comes in so many places. So it is in most of the Samhitas, the word Ritam is very much described. So I'm going to break for a minute and get you guys to think about what does Rita actually means. Rita. So who wants to come in here, please? Any ideas on Ritam? What is Ritam of Vedas?
In Purusha Sutta, you describe Rutam as slightly different, like different seasons or something.
Yeah, well spotted. That is Ritus. So that is Ritu. Ritam is different from Ritu. Yeah, Grishma Ritu, Sharad Ritu. Yeah, Ritu is seasons, Devalji. Ritam is slightly different. So what is a Ritam? Okay, Ritam, I think, do your Google research. There's lots of articles that talk about what is the Ritam of the Vedas. Yeah, so I'm just going to give you a very bird's eye view on this. Ritam can have three meanings. One is truth, Yathartha Jnana. What is Yathartha Jnana? Knowing something as it exists. So, for example, if a rope is on the street and you perceive the rope as a rope, that is Yathartha Jnana. But if you perceive that rope as a snake, then that becomes Ayathartha Jnana or Brahma. Whereas Yathartha Jnana is called Prama. Yeah, so that is Yathartha Jnana. So, one meaning of Rutam is Yathartha Jnana. Okay, and that knowledge usually is elevating. Knowledge always gives us happiness. To say ignorance is bliss is stupidity from a Vedic perspective. Ignorance is not bliss. Knowledge is bliss from Vedic philosophy. So Ananda we get from Yathartha Jnana is also Ritam. Yeah. So Yathartha Jnana, truth is called Ritam. Whereas what is Satyam? Satyam is the practical application of truth is called Satyam. Yeah, Ritam and Satyam are used in many places in Vedantic philosophy, and we need to clearly make that distinction. What is Satyam? Satyam is putting Ritam in practice. That is Satyam. Whereas Ritam is truth. That is the Ritam. Yeah. So that gives us Ananda. Yeah. The other meaning of Ritam is changeless. That which is changeless. For example, Jivas are changeless. Brahman is changeless. Yeah, they are all called Rita in one aspect. Yeah, so in Vedic philosophy, Ritam is also described. The highest being is also celebrated as Ritam, Nirvikara Sthiti. Yeah, and known through the Vedas. Vedas are eternal, and you knowing some ideas through Vedas, that is also used in certain context as Ritam. But primarily, Ritam means Yathartha Jnana. Putting that into practice is Satyam. Okay, so Ritam Pibantav. So this Ananda that you get from Yathartha Jnana, Pibantav means literally enjoying. Yeah, so the verse needs to be built. The plot of this verse needs to be gradually built. Guham Pravishtav, Parame Pararde. What are these fellows doing? Ritam Pibantav. Yeah. So I have put one verse from a Samhita called Brihat Samhita, which actually gives a definition of what is going on in this verse. Atma antaratma iti harireka eva dvida stitaha nivishto hrudaye nityam rasam pibati karmajam. Okay, so it is a clean verse of the jivas do karmas, right? We do actions, and with that action, we get some punya palas, fruits of good deeds. And this particular verse says, yes, the jivas experience, but are jivas independent experiences? No, they are dependent experiences. And I've got this here. Who is the experiencer or enjoyer here? Is it the brain-mind complex? Cannot be, because they are insentient and are not capable of experience. This is where our neurobiologists fall down to the floor. And I have no hesitation to describe this, because an insentient being is not capable of experiencing or enjoying anything. A stone does not enjoy, and a brain-mind complex is made of material substance. So on its own, it cannot experience and enjoy. But our neurobiologists try and formulate theories after theories, somehow bringing an insentient jada will actually experience something. How is that possible? God only knows. But most philosophers would refute that. Mind-brain complex is not the experiencer, because it is not sentient. Jiva is a sentient being, and it is an experiencer. Yes, we experience happiness, we experience dukkha, or we experience ananda of the punya phalas that we get, but we are still dependent experiencers. So in the primary sense, it is the Brahman who is an independent experiencer. So when I say primarily the experiencer of the Vedas, I would only say Brahman is the real experiencer. He is the independent experiencer. Okay. And that Brahman, this Upanishad says there are two fellows. One is Atma and the other one is Antaratma. And who are these fellows? They are the names for Hari. But that Hari is Eka. But this Eka Hari is described as Dvidaha Stitaha. As two names is given, that doesn't mean they are two different entities. It is just for our understanding that this is described. Okay, why is this important? Because when we understand this concept of dependent experiencer, independent experiencer, sitting in the cave, so on, then we will understand what is it that Krishna is talking about. Because there are so many verses in the Gita where Krishna talks about this. So why don't we just recite this, and I'm going to call upon folks to take up this verse. Deval, before we go into that, you had raised your hands.
Sorry, just going back one step with the previous slide. Yeah, in this, where is that there are two? You know, on
Tau.
your
Yeah. So the word tau, yeah, pravish tau. The tau is there, right? Tau is two. Tau is dual.
Okay. Okay.
So Sanskrit is the only language where you have singular, you have dual, and you have plural.
Yeah.
All other languages you have singular and plural only. You don't have dual. Only in Sanskrit the dual is there, and the dual will come when there is tau. Yeah. Look out for those tau, tau, atma now. Yeah. So they are all duals.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, so when Krishna goes through this verse, so who wants to take up this verse? Now, one person can recite all the 4 verses, or we can take it in series. Sheilaji, do you want to start off and inspiring others, please?
Okay, Madhu. Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhrudam sarvabhutanam Nyatva mam shanti mrichati. Shall I continue?
Yeah, continue, Sheilaji. You finish the rest.
Aham mi sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhureva cha na tu mam abhijananti tatvena tascha vantite patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhaktyupahrutam ashnami prayatatmanah. Shrotrам chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam ghranameva cha adhishtaya manashchayan Vishayan upasevate. Thank you.
Beautifully recited, Shilaji. Very, 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 very nice. So yes, so in these verses of Gita, Krishna says, I am the experiencer, I am the enjoyer. Yeah. So these are all clear statements. And say, look at the Bhoktaram, Bhokta, Ashnami. Yeah. I am Vishayan Upasevate. So they are all talking about enjoyership, experiencer. And Krishna says, I am the person who enjoys everything. Why? The Vedas talk about this. Guha, Rutam pibantau sukrutasya loke guham pravistau parame pararde. And Krishna is, Vedavyasa is elaborating this in the Gita. Okay, of I accept fruits, whatever good deeds you do, I accept it. If you do Agni Homa, I accept it. Okay, so what is it that the God accepts? God accepts, enjoys good deeds of jivas. So what is it that he accepts then? When we think about this patram pushpam phalam toyam yome bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhakti upahrutam ashnami prayatatmanaha. So when he says, I accept, I enjoy, what is it that he accepts and enjoys? So who wants to come here and express their views on these amazing verses of Gita?
He enjoys all our good deeds, no? All the good karmas, what we do, he enjoys that.
What aspect of that he enjoys? Say, for example, if I just go and let's say I go and do a surgery, and that's a good deed. Yeah, does he accept that, or what is it that he accepts? Jagadish ji, you had raised your hand. Knowledge. Okay, excellent.
I thought it's
Nita
the
Susu?
bhava. It's the bhava.
Bhava, Sheila ji, great stuff, great
No,
answer.
he enjoys the devotion or the actions in devotion that we do towards him.
Okay, brilliant. So we got Nita, two Nitas. Ajit has also raised. So Ajit, you go first, then Nita next.
Thanks. I mean, just extolling the values of the Supreme. So I think when we praise the Supreme and extol his greatness, he enjoys that.
Yeah, Ajit, thank you so much. Nita, Sushruth?
I think it's like how a parent is happy when their child is doing well. So you feel happy if your child does well. So that's what he feels, is if we are taking the right path towards him, then he feels happier.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, so all wonderful answers. I also especially like Sheila ji's explanation also about the bhava and on what is your intention and what is the approach in what is the spirit in which you have done this. That also becomes important. Say, for example, when we do Agni Homa, when we do Havan, we are throwing things into the fire and the whole thing disappears, it burns. So what aspect of that is actually reaching Brahman then? Because your food that you have thrown into the yajna, that is burned, that is gone. So what is it that has reached Brahman then? So to address this, there is a very key verse in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It's worth going to this chapter in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad that actually talks about this problem of, what is it? Tasmat esha pravivikta aharatara iva eva bhavati asmat sharirat atmanaha. Okay, there is an important verse in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad that captures what Sheila ji actually mentioned, our bhava, pravivikta aharatara. Okay, that is the subtle food, that we are offering, that bhava, the good deed, the good intentions that we are offering. And Ajit and others mentioned about the devotion that we are looking at that person as a supreme being with respect and love and adoration. We are offering something that all becomes that pravivikta aharatara. Okay, so now when we are dealing with this pravivikta aharatara that he eats, I have to bring this very interesting verse which is now making its appearance after several months in our forum. Mundaka Upanishad 3.1. Dva suparna sayuja sakaya samanam vriksham parishashva jate tayor anyaha pippalam swadatti anashnan anyaha abhichakashiti. Look at this word anashnan. Ashnan means to eat, to enjoy. But here Mundaka Upanishad says anashnan. So anashtan means that which does not eat or that which does not enjoy what the other person is doing. So when you look at this Mundaka Upanishad, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the verse of Gita and the Katha Upanishad, there is some contradiction that may appear that, oh, look, Mundaka Upanishad is saying that there are two birds sitting in the tree. This fellow is eating all these fruits. They are bitter, but he thinks it's very sweet. Whereas the other bird is he is in full bliss and he is just looking at this bird and saying, what the heck is this guy doing? But he is not eating anything, but he is in full bliss, is what this verse says. So that becomes important as to how do you resolve that conflict. So Acharya there says, Shubham pibanto asau nityam na ashubham saharihi pibet. So that is the equation there. So what that means is, and I think it is Pratibha ji who mentioned that the Supreme does not accept all the bad deeds that we do, okay, but the Supreme accepts our good deeds. So this anashnan anyaha there means this fellow is eating these fruits of samsara, which are all bad deeds. So that is why he doesn't eat that. But if this fellow was actually turning towards him and doing glorious devotional service, then of course this fellow will ashnan. He will be eating and he will also be enjoying that. Okay, so that is how you resolve that of the Supreme enjoys the good karmas. In fact, the Upanishads and the Vedas go to the extent to say that because Brahman is the independent experiencer, whatever good deeds that we do and the punya that we get and the punya or the ananda we get is only a fraction of the real ananda, because 9/10 of the ananda has been taken away by Brahman and he has just given you one portion for your punya phala. Yeah, that is how the Upanishad says. Suresh ji.
Yes, Madhu, just a question that we are now saying. I mean, we know that he is everywhere, right? Antaryami, within, without, the soul independent experiencer. Does he have a choice not to experience something? How do you reconcile the fact that he only experiences the good things? He does not experiment. He is I mean, it ends there, right? So I'm just wondering.
Yeah. It's a fabulous question, Suresh, as to if he does not accept the bad deeds of jivas, then does that mean that he is deficient in that aspect, that he is not accepting the bad things of the jivas? I think the answer to that is the Satya Sankalpa. This is how the rules of the operation of the universe has to be. And he would, the view there is, bad deeds, jivas, you keep it. Good deeds, yes, I'll give you a share, but the good deeds I will also enjoy. But also, Suresh, the key answer to that question is the bad deeds are still under his control. He controls the bad deeds that are happening to Jiva. He is still an independent controller of everything. In that sense, he controls, but he decides by Satya Sankalpa to give the benefits of the bad deeds to the Jivas only, and he takes only the good deeds. Good deeds means what? Nishkama Karma Yoga, Bhakti, Jnana, Vairagya, and all the other things that we do. He accepts this. You're right. He is already fully in bliss. He is Satya Sankalpa. He is, what is the other word for Apta Kama? That is the word. He is Apta Kama. He is already in infinite pleasure and bliss. He doesn't need yours and mine's punya to enhance his bliss. He is already in infinite bliss. But still he decides to accept that because he likes his devotees, and that is why he accepts, not that something is deficient in him that he has to accept. He is Apta Kama already, but it is his Satya Sankalpa that this is how the world needs to operate. So I hope that answers your question, but that is a very deep question, Suresh, needs to be thought quite a lot. So I hope you get the idea, as again, as how Suresh mentioned, he is Antaryaman, but at the same time, he is also everywhere. So as I told you before, that Atma and Antaratma, Atma as we know, and they will describe that very well in the previous class, that Atma in the primary sense means Brahman. Antaratma always means only Brahman. So that Atman and Antaratman are the two rhythm, or the two chappies who are enjoying all the things that are happening here. So that Atma is inside our body, right? So Shrotram, Chakshu, Sparshanam, Cha Rasanam, Granam Eva Cha, Adhishtaya, Manascha, Ayam Vishayan Upasevate. Okay, that is Atma there. Yeah, whereas the one inside the Jiva is also enjoying. It is just two ways of looking at the same thing. Yeah, so Sukrutasya loke. So Guham Pravishto Parame Pararde. I'll finish with Sukrutasya loke today and close. Yeah. So this Guham Pravishto Parame Pararde Ritam Pibantau. And what are they doing? What are these two chaps doing in Sukrutasya loke? So that is an interesting word. Sukrutasya loke. Sukrut means what? Good deeds. Krut means actions, right? Sukrut means good deeds. And if you do good karmas, you have a particular loka. Loka means this body. Yeah. So we go through what 8.4 million species, right? From bacteria, whatever. And then we have reached this sadhana sharira of a human being. So we have reached this sadhana sharira as human being after doing all sorts of good deeds in our millions of previous lives. That is the view. Sukrut asya loke. So sadhana sharira, that is attained after good deeds. Okay, sukrutasya loke. Okay. The other view, and that is much more of a complex view of those of certain schools of Vedanta, and I'll put it in here. So sukrutasya loke means the pure body. What is the pure body of what is the pure body that can ever exist? It is the body of Chaturmukha Brahma or Mukhya Prana. Okay, those are the purest of bodies. So they are called sukrutasya loke. Okay, so Isha Upanishad, for example, also will talk about this, and again Rig Veda talks about this concept called Matarishva. Matarishva Jagama, Matarishva Dadati, Anejadekam Manasa Javiyo, Nainad Deva Apnuvan, Purvamarshad Tad Avato Anyan. Anyan atyeti tishtati asmin apo matarishva dadati. Isha Upanishad, 4th mantra. They all talk about this Mukhya Prana, who is also called Matarishva, who is considered as Parame Pararde, the highest loka in which Jiva, the highest Jivatman in which Brahman exists is these fellows, Chaturmukha Brahman and Mukhya Prana, and they are also called Sukrutasya Loke. Okay, so this person, this person who is in the Guham, this Paramatman, which is what our friend Yama has been talking about, Antaryamin, and he says this Antaryamin is in the Jiva, and the Antaryamin is also inside the body that covers the Jiva, and these two aspects enjoy all the good things that this person within the Sukrutasya Loke or in the Sadhana Sharira does. Okay, so this concept of Atma and Antaratma is very important in theistic schools of philosophy. Atma, Antaratma iti Hari Ekaha Eva Dvida Stitaha Nivishtaha Hrudaye Nityam Rasam Pibati Karmajam. So inside the Jiva, that aspect of Brahman that is inside the Jiva is called Antaryaman. Whereas the Jiva is covered by Linga Sharira and all the other coverings, isn't it? What are those coverings? Anandamaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, Manonmaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Annamaya Kosha. These are all material coverings of the body. And our Shastra says, in these material coverings, Taittiriya Upanishad talks about this quite a lot. In these 5 outer coverings of the body is Narayana, Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. That is how you contemplate. And for the functioning of the bodies, you have 5 pranas, right? Prana, Udana, Vyana, Samana, and Apana. And these are the 5 forms of Mukhya Prana. And in these 5 forms is Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Vasudeva, Narayana. So that is how the contemplation of the Vedic philosophy is. That is how, why are those 5 Vyuha forms of the Lord? It is for these kinds of contemplation for it. If you don't want to do contemplation, that aspect, that's fine. But there are certain folks who have certain aptitudes or a level of contemplation that they will be looking at these 5 Vyuha forms of the Supreme. Narayana, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Vasudeva, Narayana in various aspects. And that all fits in. That is how our Rishis have actually thought about this problem. That this Brahman has to be in all the 5 coverings, and let's give him 5 names. This Brahman has to be in all the 5 pranas. Let us give him 5 names. And of course, these 5 pranas are the 5 forms of the Mukhya Prana. Yeah. Tasya Upanishadaha Ahariti. Tasya Upanishadaha Ahamiti. So aham, we have done before, is a secret name of the Supreme. Aheyatvat aham nama. He who is inside us as our antaryamin and is undiscardable is called aham. It is not a creation of some schools. This is what Brihadaranyaka Upanishad has given a definition of what aham means. Tasya Upanishada ahamiti. That which is outside the jiva is called ahar. Okay, that is also a name of the Supreme, of the Upasana of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So this verse is actually quite a deep verse that opens up this whole schools of various strands of Vedantic philosophy. When Yama says, Rutam pibantau sukrutasya loke, guham pravishtau parame pararde, all these ideas should come. And then what Krishna has said, why has Krishna said, I am the enjoyer, patram pushpam palam toyam, the famous verse will then make sense. Okay. And in the next two verses, which we will deal with in the next subsequent classes, chaya tapau brahma vidho vadanti panchagnayo yecha trinachiketaha. Look at this panchagni. The reason why I am going to stop here is, think about this prana, udana, vyana, samana, apana, 5 agnis. These are the 5 agnis in our body. And in the Vedic sacrifice, there are 5 fire pits. Okay. And in that 5 fire pits, you do panchagni, sacrifice. Adopt, and trinachiketaha that we have done, trinachiketa, sacrifice, is one type of panchagni. So these are all the ideas that will come in the subsequent classes, where the panchagni makes sense when we look at annamaya kosha, pranamaya kosha, manomaya, vijnanamaya, udana, anandamaya, 5. Prana, udana, vyana, samana, apana, 5. Panchagnayo yecha trinachiketa. So we will deal with that in all its glory in the subsequent classes. So I am going to stop there because I love to do this verse, chaya tapo brahmavido vadanti panchagnayo yecha trinachiketa, so that when next time when you go to Havan and see that Vedic Havan, I think we should look at it from that perspective, then it gets more interesting. Okay, so on that note, I'm going to close today's session, and the subsequent verses are all so beautiful. I can't wait to go through the verse on the chariot and so on. They're all wonderful verses of Katha Upanishad. So hopefully we'll dwell in it in subsequent sessions. And I got 2 announcements to make before I close today's session. Number 1, so next Sunday, I think we should go back and do our Gita Chintana. It's long time overdue. I've kind of forgotten what we did last time. I think we did chapter 11. If somebody could remind us, that will be really helpful. I think we should do chapter 12, and I need to go back to the on-call rota and see who is next. And I'll send out some emails for folks to coordinate Gita Chintana for next Sunday. After that, we'll carry on with our Upanishad Chintana. And the second, thing that I want to disclose today is there's been a lot of background work that has been going on for the 19th of June, which we think we should celebrate as our annual day celebration and also as a Vedic retreat. So we've been doing all these virtual sessions. The intention here is actually we meet in person. I know for folks in Dubai and India and the US, it's going to be challenging, but you're very welcome to take that flight to Manchester and come to Stoke. Stoke is only 1.5 hours from Manchester Airport. So we are going to have a 1-day beautiful session. We are planning all the itinerary at this point. It's going to be a combination of plenary speaker from India, some lectures, kirtans, bhajans, and so on. So it's going to be a full day packed with various spiritual events. And I need to make it very clear, this is a spiritual forum. It will be purely a spiritual event, no entertainment apart from just spiritual interactions. That is going to happen on the 19th of June. So please watch out, look at your calendar, book those dates, please, to make the trip to Stoke. Okay. And most importantly, we need volunteers and people to put themselves forward to participate in various events. So we will be sending out those informations shortly within the next few days. And of course, next Sunday is going to be Gita Chintana. Okay, so on that note, I'm going to close today's session. Krishna Pranamastu. I will take any question and answers. Okay, so if there are no questions, because we had a very, very interactive session today. So if there are no...
I had one question.
Yeah, please, Sheilaji, go for it. Yeah.
What Sureshji asked, that God gives only Paramatma, that 1/10 of the results of our yajnas, and whatever bad deeds, he doesn't give the result of it or accept it.
He doesn't. The bad deeds are karmas, right? The karmic imprints. So when I say bad deeds, it doesn't mean you just need to go and murder somebody. That is not just the bad deed. The bad deed is the karmic. Yeah. So the karmic imprints that we get. So bad deeds means karmic imprints. Doesn't have to kill somebody or shoot somebody or bomb somebody. You don't have to do that. That is the extreme forms of bad deeds. But all the actions that we do every day, Sheilaji, you would expect is bad deeds, because it's done in sakama karma. It is not nishkama karma. So the karmic imprints he doesn't accept, because the karmic imprints is material and it goes on to the linga sharira and so on. So that stays with the jiva, and he doesn't take that those imprints don't happen to him, who is as an antaryaman in the jiva, but also in the material body he is there, but he doesn't accept those karmic imprints, because that is jiva's own self-making. He didn't do it. Jivas made a decision based on their own qualities and attributes to do certain deeds, not devoting or submitting it to the Supreme. And when he doesn't surrender what he does to the Supreme, it becomes a sakama karma and it gives a karmic imprint. So he says all the karmic imprints made, you keep it and enjoy in eternal cycles of samsara that you're going to do. But if you do things in nishkama karma, and those gives you that punya phala that you get and that ananda that you get, I like it. I will also take 9/10 of it. I'll give you 1/10 because you've been a good chap and you've surrendered to me and you've worked for me and you've submitted to me. I appreciate that. As a token of my, as a gesture of my appreciation, I give you some ananda and punya for that. And that is the view then.
The past question, I mean, your old question, isn't it? It's got a direct connection with the Sthita Prajna question. I mean, answer which everybody answered, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Sheilaji.
Right. Now, Madhusudanji, you talked about vritti jnana. What was exactly, I kind of like missed that. Vritti jnana and the other one was
Swarupa jnana.
Swarupa jnana.
So there are two types of knowledge you can get. So one is vritti jnana, one is Swarupa jnana. So what is vritti jnana? Vritti jnana means the knowledge that you get using your material indriyas. So that is the easy way of looking at it. So your eyes, your nose, your ears, your tongue, and your touch. So these 5 jnana indriyas. So the knowledge that you get from your jnana indriyas, your material jnana indriyas, how do you get the knowledge? So you need to think about it. Knowledge is, for example, philosophers think about knowledge as a very, very difficult problem. You know, we are all knowledgeable. So I am knowledgeable of this cup here. Yeah, this cup is there. I got a knowledge of this cup that I'm holding. For us, it is a very, very simple thing. But for a philosophers, that awakening of knowledge of the presence of cup is a very significant event. As to how did the knowledge of the cup actually happen? Is this an imagination, or the cup is actually really there? And that I'm now aware of this cup being present outside of me. Okay, so that is the question. And you know, Buddhist philosophers, Advaita philosophers, Dvaita philosophers, Vishishta Advaita philosophers, Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, they all have some views on this. And that is for pure philosophers to study and understand. And of course, in the Western philosophy also you have that. So that knowledge that comes from material indriyas, how are we? Who is the first question, Jagdishji, I'm going to throw back at you is, who gets knowledge? What is your view? Who gets the knowledge?
We as humans are the one actually seeking more knowledge.
Yeah, but who gets the knowledge? Who is aware? Who is that thingy that is aware? Knowledge is what? Knowledge is awakened to something, right? So who gets the knowledge? For example, is the stone aware of the earth on which it is placed? Is the stone aware of it?
No, the Chetana, that is the one who actually gets the knowledge.
Thank you, Jagdishji. So it is the Chetana, it is the sentient being that gets knowledge. So that is a key idea of it is the sentient beings that get knowledge. Okay, so you have knowledge, you have sentient beings. So knowledge has two aspects. It's called bipolar nature of object of knowledge. You need to have a knower and you need to have a knowable thing. And when you have a knower and a knowable thing, then knowledge is occasion to the knower. Yeah, so that is called bipolar nature of knowledge. So that once you get that grasp of that idea, then you can build up what is vritti jnana based on that. So you need an object and you need a knower. Okay, so the knower can have two types of knowledge. He can have knowledge of things that are outside him, or he can have a knowledge of himself. So he himself can become an object of his own knowledge. Yeah, so that is paraprakasha, and this is called swaprakasha. So vritti jnana is the knowledge that we get of the things that are external to us. So that is vritti jnana. Vritti means it is a mind. Yeah, whatever happens in the five components of the mind, and that feeds into the soul, which then becomes aware of the external object that is there outside it. Whereas things like sukha, dukkha, time, space, jiva swarupa, knowledge of Brahman, they all happen to the jiva swarupa itself. So that is one view of what the jiva gets knowledge about itself, the jiva experiencing sukha and dukkha, jiva experiencing time and space. So that is an interesting, very, very advanced view of time and space. Who perceives time and space? Indriyas, external indriyas don't. One view is it is the jiva swarupa that perceives time as a padartha and space as a padartha. So all those things are called swarupa jnana, whereas the knowledge that we get when the mind gets changed, the biochemical reactions of the brain creates certain changes in the mind, and that changes is what the soul perceives, and those changes is actually what knowledge is, and that is representative of the external object. So I hope it's a complex idea, so I hope I try to get it out easily.
Yeah, yes, thank you so much for that makes it well.
Yeah. Excellent. So if you don't have any further questions, Harish, do you want to take us through Om, please?
Sure.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll catch up next Sunday. So Gita Chintana next Sunday. Okay. Take care. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.